Okay, so we are recording this presentation for future use. So my name is Katrina Mitchell. I am the 4-H agent for Wichita County, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And I'm happy to present to y'all today with Sarah Towery. She is the American Dorper Sheep Breeder Society Youth Coordinator, and she's going to talk to us all about Dorpers and the breed she loves. Sarah and her husband Mark own BC Sheep Company and have been involved with Dorpers for several years now, and I'm sure she will tell you some more about herself. I've known her for quite a few years too when we started learning about working border collies. So that's where we came to know each other several years ago with our dogs. So Sarah, you will want to go ahead and get started?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Want to say hi to everybody and just say this is the first time that I've ever done one of these, so just bear with me if I stumble or do something weird. I'm Sarah Towery, and as Katrina said, I am the youth coordinator for the American Dorper Sheep Breeders Society. Basically what my job is to promote Dorper and white Dorper sheep among youth, organize activities for them, advocate for them in certain instances, help run our youth board, things like that. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk to you all about Dorpers and white Dorpers, because I think this breed is really, really cool. And I think the more kids get involved in this breed, the more they tell their friends, and then they tell their friends, and it kind of spider webs out. I've been raising Dorpers for about 12 years now. My kiddos grew up in it and are now gone and out of the house. We still do raise Dorpers. We actually raise white Dorpers now. We sold out of most of our Dorpers and raised white Dorpers. But we go to events and promote them and stuff like that. We also sell commercial lambs and lamb meat, and I'm going to go over all of this through our little slideshow here. I guess Katrina has the chat box open, and as we go through these slides, if anyone has any questions, I guess type your question in the chat box and Katrina can interrupt me, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has. But we're going to start off with a little bit of breed history, because this is a pretty unique breed, and a lot of people they kind of know the history of it, but they don't know the whole history. So we're going to, and I will say I'm not going to go as in-depth as we do in, say, our breeders courses, because those last days and days and days. And I'll say this again, there is a book, if you're very, very interested in Dorpers, it's called Dorpers into the New Century, and it was written by a gentleman in South Africa, and it is the most comprehensive book about Dorpers and how to select them, ideal traits, cull traits, its complete history. Everything you need to know about a Dorper as far as history and typing and all that stuff is in that book, and you can order it online. And I'll go over that book again before we end this, because that's going to give you, if you want to learn more in depth. I'm just going to kind of scrape the surface, so to speak. So breed history. The Dorper breed was developed out of necessity. It comes from South Africa, and the South African farmers were having a hard time competing with the native meat sheep from England. So a group of sheep breeders down in South Africa got together and started breeding sheep that would have high gains, be a true meat animal, but would also do good in the very arid climate of South Africa, which obviously we know the sheep that generally live in England are wool sheep, and they do not like the heat. So they don't gain as fast. So that was the point of what this group of breeders in South Africa was trying to do. They were trying to create a meat sheep that would thrive in that arid part of South Africa. And it was the South African Meat Board that did that. They were looking for carcass, yet would thrive under the conditions of South Africa. And if you've ever seen pictures of South Africa, it's pretty much sand. So what they did is they chose to use the horned Dorset, which is the sheep on your left. I'm sure if you know anything about sheep, you're familiar with that breed. I think most of if you're in the show ring, they do have the horned Dorsets, but I think in our area of Texas, most of the Dorsets you see are polled, but same breed. It's a meat sheep, obviously. And then that black-headed animal on our right is the black-headed Persian. And I'm going to be real blunt, they're not the prettiest sheep out there. Excuse me. As the picture shows. They're a fat-tailed desert breed. They thrive in the desert. They do very, very good. They're kind of like the camel of the sheep world out there. They also breed out of season, which is a trait that the Dorper inherited from them. As we all know, if you're in sheep, you know that sheep generally will breed in the fall naturally and then lamb in the spring. The great thing about the black-headed Persian, what it brought outside of the hardiness aspect, is that out-of-season breeding. So black-headed Persians can breed year-round. They are not a seasonal breeder. And then the Dorset brings the fast-growing, heavy-muscled body to it. Now, I'll say when they first started crossing these things, and there's pictures in that Dorpers to the new century. Some of the stuff they got was it didn't look like the modern day Dorper. It took numerous crosses and crossing back on and doing this and doing that to get the Dorper and the white Dorper that you see today. They didn't just breed a Dorset ram to a black-headed Persian ewe and poof, they got what you see today as a Dorper. It took a little bit more than that, but this group of breeders was very dedicated. They had an idea in mind. You talk to some of the older gentlemen, and every once in a while, ADSBS will have them come over. Every other year, they run a breeders course up in Duncan, Oklahoma, and they'll talk about that they had a vision. They're very, and even today, they're very single-minded about what a Dorper and a white Dorper should be. There's really no deviation off of what they expect it to be. So in the 50s, we had a little controversy in South Africa. Started getting some black-headed animals, which looked like the Persian in color, and then got some that were colored more like the Dorset. And it created a little bit of strife among those breeders in South Africa. And as you can see, they called the breeders called those white sheep the Dorsen. And then they wanted to use, and then there was another group of breeders that wanted to use the black markings as their trademark. So in the 60s, it was settled when both of the breeders finally decided to come together and create one organization, but keeping the two breeds separate, which kind of sometimes confuses people. So they technically are two separate breeds. You couldn't take a white Dorper ram and breed it to a Dorper ewe and get a 100% registered animal to put in the stud book. We'll go over that a little bit later, but they're two separate breeds. You breed your white Dorpers to your white Dorpers and your black-headed Dorpers to your black-headed Dorpers. So all this is going on in South Africa. Dorpers have not come to the U.S. They're over there developing the breed, tweaking things. So the American Dorper Sheep Breeder Society was founded in December of 1995, and the next year they held their first event. It was a meeting, and I think there was a small show in Cameron, Texas. And that's when they had their business meeting, and the board of directors was elected. And then by December of that year, the organization was in full swing. We had a little bit of an issue because live animals were not allowed to be shipped from South Africa to the U.S. I may be wrong on this. I believe it was something to do with hoof and mouth or something like that. Anyway, we couldn't get those live animals from South Africa to the U.S. So the breeders that created the ADSBS had to find a way to get the sheep to the U.S. So what happened was South Africa shipped embryos to Canada, and in Canada, the embryos were implanted into recip use. I'm sure many of y'all are familiar with artificial insemination and flushing and all that stuff with sheep. That's essentially what they did. South Africa shipped the embryos, and the vets in Canada put them into recip ewes, and then the recip ewes were taken over the border from Canada to the U.S. And when they lambed out, they had 100% Dorper and white Dorper lambs at their side. And that's how we got Dorpers into the U.S. when we couldn't ship live animals from South Africa. And now it's one of the largest and fastest growing breeds in the nation. It's just amazing from our humble beginnings where we are right now. So they're a very highly prolific breed of meat sheep. I can't stress this enough. These sheep, in their truest sense, are just doers. I took a lot of ribbing from my cattle friends when we first got into sheep, and I'm sure y'all know about the range wars and all that stuff between the sheep guys and the cattle guys. Everyone's always like, sheep are looking for a place to die. These Dorpers are not looking for a place to die. I can tell you that. They go out, the good ones, if they're the way a Dorper should be, they go out, they do their job. They don't require shearing. This is another trait the black-headed Persian gave the Dorper and white Dorper breed. These sheep actually shed. Ideally, their covering should be a mix of wool and hair, which makes it absolutely useless for anything. You can't even spin it because of the hair. But you don't have to pay the shearer to come out and shear your sheep. You don't have to have those sheep getting hot in the heat of summer. We have 2 Hampshire ewes and a ram in our pasture right now with our Dorpers, and they're dying, and they got sheared. I'm going to have to shear them again because they're too hot. It's just too hot with all that wool on them. The Dorpers, they shed their coat, and they're good, and they're off. Ideally, with the no shearing, a Dorper should keep a strip down the back, the center of their back. Some breeders will select for a complete shedder. That's a personal preference. The South Africans really like that strip left along the back, and in my opinion, I like the strip left along the back because it keeps the bugs at bay. If you have basically a naked sheep out there, the bugs are going to feast on that poor sheep all summer, and you're going to be having to put Ultra Boss and all that stuff on that animal to keep them from going stir crazy. So they require no shearing. The other great thing about them, and this is something that a lot of people are like, oh, well, they're parasite resistant. They're not parasite resistant. I have to say it till I'm blue in the face. They're not. What they are is they can handle a heavier parasite load than other breeds. Many of the other sheep breeds get a little wormy and they go down and they act like they want to die. Dorper sheep can handle the heavier parasite loads But if a Dorper sheep starts to act wormy and go down, they're probably carrying quite a bit of parasites, and you really need to pray and hope and worm and hope that they pull through, and then reevaluate your worming schedule, because when a Dorper sheep gets really wormy, unless there's some underlying health thing going on with it, and goes down, then you have a serious problem. They do need to be wormed. So many people I talk to are like, oh, I never worm my Dorpers. You need to worm them, because they can get worms just like all the other breeds. They can just handle it better. They don't show it the way other breeds do. The other great thing, they're non-selective grazers. My Dorpers are down in the pasture. They're eating prickly pear. They're eating mesquites. They graze above their head like a goat. Not something other breeds of sheep do. So I know a lot of, I laugh, a lot of cattle guys used to turn goats out after the cattle to clean up what the cattle wouldn't eat. Well, now they're going to sheep, these Dorpers. Throwing the Dorpers out there, letting them clean up what the cattle doesn't eat, because they aren't as picky as the cattle and other breeds of sheep. The other great thing about them, they finish out faster. I like quick turnaround time on my stuff. There's no reason to have to keep animals any longer than you should if you're in a commercial operation. 4 or 5 month old lambs. I mean, we raise some that are pushing 90 to 100 pounds at 4 to 5 months old, and that's ready to go to the processor on our place. Granted, we pull the ram lambs before that, usually about 3 months, because they do get a little froggy, and they have been known to breed at 3 months. But if it's a ewe lamb that you're looking to finish out, or a wether, I mean, it's nice to just be able to pull them off mama and send them to the sale barn or send them to the processor. You have nothing into them. So that's the other great thing about them. And then they are also known for super high newborn lamb vigor. I don't know how many of y'all have been involved with other breeds of sheep or some breeds of goats. I had goats a long time ago, but they were just little pygmies to work my border collies on, and I got rid of them because I couldn't keep them in a fence to save my life. So I don't know much about goats, but I do talk with people who have been in goats for a very long time, and they said the problem with a lot of these goat breeds is the babies are born and they don't want to get up, or mamas walk away from them. Some of these other sheep breeds, the babies just, I mean, the first day or so, you don't know if they're going to make it, because they just you're basically begging them to nurse. These Dorper babies, they come out, they're getting up, and they are looking for that mama's bag. I mean, they are on the hunt, and they do not stop until they find that nipple. It's amazing. And I honestly didn't know how much vigor they had until we started raising Hampshires a few years ago. And those Hampshires are totally different than the Dorpers. So the Dorpers are just so much easier. Those babies get up and are ready to eat. You don't have to sit there. You don't have to help them. You don't have to beg them to eat. They're there, and they're looking for that mama's bag. And the mama is trying to be a good mama too. Okay, going over some breed standards, which I already touched on a little bit. Again, Dorpers into the new century, y'all. This is the book you need. If you're going to have Dorpers or white Dorpers, get this book, and then get yourself to a breeder's course. ADSBS does them every other year up in Duncan. So hopefully, if everything goes okay with the virus and all that stuff, next year, hopefully, we'll be doing that in Duncan. The neat thing about Dorpers and white Dorpers is our judges and inspectors must pass a judge's course designed to develop their eye to the ideal Dorper and white Dorper sheep. Inspectors, sheep are graded within Dorpers, and inspectors can be judges and judges can be inspectors. It kind of goes back and forth, and there are some inspectors that are not judges and some judges that are not inspectors. But they have to pass a course and prove they know what they're looking for. The course is offered up in Duncan, along with the 2 breeders courses. I've been through those courses. It is very intense. You look at a lot of sheep. Your brain feels like mush at the end of the day, but you have to look at those sheep. You have to develop your eye. And this is something the South Africans are very, very adamant about, that they want, you know, anytime there's a human component, you're going to have some variation. When you have 2 ideal sheep there with maybe slight differences, a personal preference may come into play, and that's okay. But there needs to be consistency on the color pattern, covering, conformation, size growth, and distribution of fat. I could spend all evening and all of tomorrow talking about colors and patterns and the ideal covering and all that stuff. A lot of it, you've got to just look at sheep. A lot of it's in that Dorpers into the new century. So I highly advise you get it. But each area is graded. When sheep are inspected, each area is graded from 1, which is a poor, through 5, which is, I put near perfect, but it's essentially perfect in what the South Africans are looking for. The sheep is then given a type of 1 to 5. All of that is averaged together, those areas that they're graded on, and then the inspector gives them a official type. Your 1 and 2 are culls. They just need to go and be processed. 3 is a good commercial sheep. 4 and 5 are stud sheep, and stud sheep are the ones that you want to continue breeding, because those are going to be seed stock type animals. Here's a picture of some ideal Dorper sheep. The ewe is on the left. She's actually a graded type 5. That was one of my old Dorper ewes, and she was inspected by a inspector from South Africa and was officially typed a 5. So he thought she was pretty darn near perfect. She's heavy bred in that picture, obviously. The ram's on the right, and I don't believe has been officially inspected, but he's darn near close to perfect in my eyes. You can see the main thing, like I said, I could spend 2 days talking about types and all that stuff. I'm just going to show, I'm going to point out the way a ram looks versus a ewe. A ewe should wedge out to the back. She should be feminine in her front, wedge out to the back. A ram should be heavier in his front and then get leaner as he goes to the back, if that makes sense. There should be triangles, but in opposite ways. You can see the ram looks real rammy in his head, masculine. The ewe is feminine. That's very important. If you don't know anything and you don't want to get into registered sheep, even if you're just doing commercial sheep, you need to be looking at the femininity and the masculinity of your animals. And here's some ideal white Dorper sheep. The ewe again is on the left, and she is a type 5. And you can see she wedges out to the back. She's real feminine in the front and then wedges out in the back. The ram on the right, really, really nice ram. He's bigger in the front, and then he's wedged in the front and then goes towards the back. He's masculine compared to her. That's the big thing. Those rams need to be masculine and the ewes need to be feminine. Okay, so what's your superpower? They turn grass into meat. That's what the basic superpower of Dorpers are. They are a meat sheep, first and foremost. Again, you can't use their covering for anything. It's useless. Some people, I guess, have tried to spin it. I don't know. My aunt spins, and I've sent her it, and she can't spin it. So maybe she's not as good of a spinner as some people. But I've been told it's got too much hair in it. It's got almost like goat hair. So they are a meat sheep first and foremost. All right, now to get into kids and Dorper sheep, my favorite subject, what my job is all about. This breed, just to give you a little bit of background, when my son first started showing Dorpers, he was probably about Abigail's age. She's there on the right. We got made fun of at the shows. We got snickered at. We had some half-hearted, rude comments made to us about the goat that was in the sheep class and blah, blah, blah. It amazes me how much the breed has grown and how much it's been accepted into our livestock shows in Texas, both in the market and in the breeding. How much the youth have grown as far as showing, the number of kids showing. Kids are coming over from other breeds now because they see how much fun showing a Dorper sheep is. You can see there's no fit and leg wool like a medium wool or South Down or anything like that. You slick them, so there's no fitting of wool like a fine wool. Some people exercise them, but most of the exercising for my breeding sheep kids is hand walking or putting them on a walker. There's no treadmills, no exercising. I mean, unless you really wanted to, but generally these animals have enough natural muscling in the breeding classes. You don't have to do that. So showing in the breeding shows with the Dorper sheep is lots of fun. It's not as high maintenance as some of the other breeds. Now, you get into the market, you're going to have to treat that animal like a market animal and run them with the dog and put them on the treadmill and stuff, but you still don't have the leg wool, which is nice because, I mean, I like the way leg wool looks, but that can be kind of hard. Okay, so Dorpers and White Dorpers have their own divisions at almost all Texas major stock shows now, which is what I just said, and I think that is just absolutely wonderful because when we first started, like I said, none of the major shows, especially in the market, they just had a hair division. Now it's specifically Dorper because there is a market lamb standard for Dorper and White Dorper sheep. Now we'll get into that more here in a bit. ADSBS offers youth breeding sheep shows throughout the year in conjunction with our major shows and sales. Duncan is our Mid-America show. It was unfortunately canceled due to COVID. I'm fixing to go to Tennessee here in 2 weeks for our Southern States show and sale. It's a cataloged sale for seed stock, and so people will be selling their animals there. And then the kids will be having a farm tour and a show and silent auction and doing all sorts of fun things there. So we try to offer, and this is for breeding sheep. We don't have any market classes at our shows and sales. It's just breeding sheep. The animals do have to be registered with ADSBS to show. Many individual clubs also offer shows. The Chisholm Trail Dorper Association, I was just down in Cameron last month. They put on 2 shows a year. A lot of times they combine it with a market or a weather dam show. The one in Cameron was just for Dorpers, but it did have a market Dorper division. We had showmanship classes and breeding classes for the kids, and also an educational day. But that's just one association that does that for those kids. And then shows around the country. All-American Junior Sheep Show, which again was unfortunately canceled due to COVID, but they are one of our large breeding sheep shows. the Big E up in the Northeast, North American International Livestock Exposition in Louisville, the famous green shavings. Those all have large Dorper and white Dorper divisions. So here's the ins and outs if you're going to show a breeding sheep. I'm going to preface this with check the rules for the individual show. These ins and outs are not set in stone for every single show. We know you read the rules. Read the rules, read the rules. I'm going to speak of our ADSBS shows, most of the Texas major stock shows, and like the All-American, Louisville, Big E, and Chisholm Trail. Sheep must be registered either purebred or full blood with ADSBS. This is something I didn't go over earlier. I'll go over it now. If y'all remember back when we talked about the embryos coming over, so there was only about 15 or 20 embryos that came over at a time. And so we had maybe 30 Dorper lambs on the ground and white Dorper. Well, it only takes 1 or 2 generations before you're breeding. You're just continually inbreeding and inbreeding and inbreeding. So what ADSBS incorporated was a breed up program. Basically, you could take a Dorper ram, that say an embryo Dorper ram, he would be considered a full blood. Anything called full blood can trace its genetics directly back to South Africa. There are no unknowns in its pedigree. It is 100% bona fide Dorper. It goes right back to South Africa. You take that full blood Dorper ram and say you have they did it a lot with like Rambouillets. That was real big down there in the hill country when these sheep were brought over. Breed it to a Rambouillet ewe, you get an F1 cross. That's a 50% Dorper. You could register it with the association as what is called a percentage. You take that 50% Dorper, if it's a ewe, breed it to another full blood ram, you get a 75%, and so on and so forth, until you've bred up to it's 96%, I believe. Now they have to be 96%, and then it's considered a pure. I'm sorry, or it might be 94. I can't remember. And then it's considered a purebred. You've got about 4 or 5 generations, but you can breed that little 50% or up and get a purebred registered Dorper sheep. The only difference between a purebred and a full blood is a purebred somewhere back 6, 7, 8 generations back, there was a Rambouillet ewe, a Hampshire ewe, a Katahdin ewe, something's back there that is not a full Dorper. So that's where we have full blood and purebred. For showing purposes, they're all the same thing. It don't matter. And in breeding, you can breed your full bloods to full bloods to purebreds. The only way you can get more full bloods is if you breed 2 full bloods, though. If you breed a full blood and a purebred, you get a purebred sheep because it still has that unknown in the back, way back in, 9, 10 generations back. And it's usually really far back there. But like I said, for showing purposes, as long as they're purebred or full blood, that's good enough. For junior shows in Texas, we all know sheep must be in the junior exhibitor's name. Can't be in mom and dad's name, can't be in the ranch name, can't be in brother and sister's name, just their name. Many shows have ownership deadlines. Check with your rules. Again, this is breeding sheep. Breeding sheep have to be validated. For example, state fair, breeding sheep do not need to be validated for our Texas State Fair. They do need to be validated for all of the winter majors, though. So you would have to purchase tags just like a market animal and get them validated. So that's something to consider. And the ownership deadlines is something to also consider because many shows will look at those. And if you have not owned the animal in time, and your county agent may look at it too, you will not be allowed to show that animal in any junior shows. In some shows, Dorpers and white Dorpers are shown by birth date. Some are classed by teeth. you've shown sheep, you know, a lot of times most of the other breeds are shown by teeth, except State Fair does everything by birth date. All the other shows, most of those are done by teeth. The only show that shows by birth date with the Dorpers is Fort Worth, outside of State Fair, and that is our large show. So we have asked them to go by birth date, and we break it down even by month because we have such a large show. We usually have over 700 sheep at Fort Worth, Dorper and White Dorper sheep. And then most larger shows divide White Dorpers and Dorpers. All the majors, I believe, divide them now. Some of the smaller shows will not, though, so don't be surprised. Like North Texas Fair, they're in the end of August, they don't divide it. It's just one division, and everyone shows together. But there will be some other smaller shows that will divide them. It just depends. Again, check your rolls, check your rolls, check your rolls on that. So something I'd like to go over, how to show a breeding Dorper and White Dorper sheep. We don't brace breeding Dorpers like a market lamb or like showing a Hampshire. Don't jack them up. Don't have their nose pointing to the sky. You can see how these two sheep are set up. You want them squared all four corners, stood up with their head up, but don't be jacking them up or anything like that. They're not meant to be shown like that, and it really doesn't create a very pretty picture. They're just not built to be shown like the Hamps and the Suffolks and the Southdowns. They're just not conformationally the same. And if you try to, with a breeding Dorper, if you try to brace them, it just really ruins the whole picture. So just don't do it. Okay, getting into Dorper market lambs. So ADSBS, as I said earlier, because most of the major Texas majors now have a Dorper division, not just a hair. Like I said, a long time ago, it used to be just hair, and you could have anything in there. Hell, they had Katahdins and all sorts of things going in there. But now they have made it where it is a Dorper division. The animals have to exhibit Dorper and White Dorper traits to be classed into that division. And ADSBS has helped in creating those standards, and the link is right there. It's on our Dorper ADSBS website too, if that's because that's a really long link for anybody to copy down. But it's on there, and it's about 2 pages long, and it talks about the traits when these classifiers come in to look at these market lambs, what they need to be looking for. Because we want true Dorpers and White Dorpers shown in this division. We don't want medium wools stuck in there because they're a different type of sheep. We want to make sure that these are Dorpers and White Dorpers. So that's why the ADSBS has helped in getting these traits put together to help the classifiers. And then again, check your individual shows for any type of additional guidelines on what need to be done. I know I say this all the time. Each show is so different. Nothing can be totally set in stone, in my opinion. So just check that show for any additional guidelines you may need. So here are 2 very successful Dorper market lambs. They just happen to be more Dorpery than White Dorper, but you can see they still are look like Dorpers. Now, when the Dorper club lamb breeders, when they're breeding them, they're making them look more like a market lamb to an extent, but they should still exhibit predominant Dorper traits. And as you can see in these pictures, they still look like a Dorper. They may have a little bit more leg on them than a breeding sheep. They might be a little bit more elevated in that front end, as you can see, which makes it easier to brace them where they don't look so strange, like when you're trying to brace a breeding sheep. So they look like market sheep, but they are like show market sheep, but they are still predominantly Dorper looking. And that's the main thing. The classifiers will throw your market lamb out if it does not meet the standards. If they are using the ADSBS market lamb classifications, there are some places that are not using them yet. I think there's some shows in Oklahoma that are a little bit more lenient as far as like color and such. But that might be changing in the future. I don't know. So check how they're classing your animals at that show, and then you can figure out when you go to look at lambs what you need to be looking for.
And Sarah, I just want to throw in here that Texas released new lamb classifications too this year, and so you can get that from your county agent or your ag teacher. So when you go to the majors, when they start to classify, you know exactly what they're going to be looking at.
Yes, that's super, super important, because there's nothing more disappointing than getting to a major and having your lamb classed out for something that's just so, I mean, they're in black and white, and look at what they are and make sure that your lamb fits in that classification, no matter what the breed, because that's just terribly heartbreaking. Okay, going to talk a little bit about a new class that ADSBS has implemented. It's called a Production U class. Similar to some of the majors that have like record bookkeeping and stuff like that. We're offering it at our sanctioned shows. The class is comprised of a record book, an interview, and a live show. So the kids have a ewe that is in their name, and they breed that ewe, and they maintain her through her pregnancy, and then she lambs. They keep records on feed costs, hay, medical, whatever that money goes into that animal from the time she gets put in with the ram to the time that she lambs. So those kids can tell you what they spent to feed that ewe for her whole gestation. And then there's actually another form that we started this year where they actually keep records on the lamb too. They track weight on the lamb to see how much it gained, and then how much they've been spending on creep feed and all that stuff. So the kids at the end of this project kind of have a pretty good idea of what it costs them to feed that ewe through gestation, and then how much it costs to put pounds on that lamb. The kids then have an interview with a panel of people that have a livestock background. We've had ranchers, bankers, ag agents. Basically what they talk to the children about is their project. They talk about their future plans, what they would do different, what they liked about the project. Maybe they wouldn't have fed that grain that was so expensive. Maybe they would have tried to feed the alfalfa. They wouldn't have had to feed as much, blah, 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 blah. And then the live show is a actual show where the ewe and her baby or babies are judged from a production standpoint. We're looking at feet, we're looking at legs, we're looking at udders, we're looking at the longevity of that ewe to go out on pasture and make a living and make babies and make money. That's what we're looking at in this class. It's based on actual real world bookkeeping. Our operation, I keep records on those animals. And then all those scores are factored together, and that determines the winner. It's designed for ewes that might not be high-powered show ewes, but are consistent producers of multiple fast-growing lambs every year. And we know that equals money in the kids' pocket. Most of these kids are not going to be sheep farmers, and that's okay, but let's teach them real-world skills. Let's teach them bookkeeping. Let's teach them public speaking. And let's teach them that these animals, in a very basic sense, should be out there doing their job. So it offers another avenue for the kids maybe that just can't go out and spend thousands of dollars on a youth that's going to go win that scholarship at San Antonio, but they can go out and purchase a really good ewe that will go out and make them some money. Another program we have is the Futurity. You get paid to show. Who doesn't like to get paid to show? So basically the way it works, and all the complete forms are available on our ADSBS website under the Youth tab if you want more information on this. Youth purchase nominated ewe lambs at designated sales privately off of a farm, or you can even breed your own, which I love the breed your own thing. The previous youth coordinator, Mr. Dan Schell, he put that in there, and that I think that is the best thing, because that just kind of goes along with that whole production thing in my mind, and that production thing is near and dear to my heart. So I love that breed your own. Or they can purchase privately or at the sales. This year there's a lot of privately off farm and breeding going on because all of our sales unfortunately have been postponed or canceled. Then you purchase your nominated ewe. The breeder nominates the ewe prior to sale. They'll be paint branded with an F. So if you ever go to a seed stock sale and see a ewe lamb with an F on her, that means that she is Futurity nominated. Then you go to your shows and you keep track of your point records. We have official point records. When your show's done, fill it out, have the secretary sign it, and then send them to Rhonda at the ADSBS office. At the end of the point year, we tally them all up, and then checks are made out to the top placing youth in each region. We have 4 regions, so depending on where you live, we go by per region. So it's not like and then we do give, we try to give a bonus to the national champion, but we do go by the region, which is kind of nice. So look into that Futurity. It's a really great thing. I mean, you're going to shows anyway. All you got to do is have the show secretary sign your stuff. No matter where you place, just have her do it, because it depends on the number of animals that were in the class and where you placed, and you get points for it. So some additional programs, we have a voucher program at our designated sales. Youth to get to be put into the pot to be drawn for vouchers. We give vouchers for, we give 3 vouchers at the sales, which if the youth decides to purchase an animal at the sale, that voucher goes towards the purchase price. And depending on how you get pulled out of the pot, that will determine how much you get. It goes anywhere from 300, 200, 350, 150, 250, and 300, I believe. There's 3 of them. The youth have to do something as far as help out with paint branding, bring something for the silent auction, compete in the youth show, do something like that. And then they fill out a little form and bring it to me, and then I put their name in the pot. And then we draw before the sale, and if you're lucky enough, you get a credit if you decide you want to buy a sheep. We also have youth photo contests, which are always fun. The kids really, really enjoy those photo contests. I get a ton of them. I have a ton of them for Cookeville that I have to print out still. So, but it just has to be, we have different age divisions and also different subjects, and you a lot of times will see these kids' pictures on the front page of our Dorper report. We also do, all these pictures are from Cameron last month, by the way. It was a great show. I had a blast. The kids had a blast. It was great. So we had an educational event there. We're trying to do more of those. We had the educational event at Cameron. We're going to have a farm tour and Showmanship Clinic out at Cookville. We're going to tour one of the big white Dorper breeders out there, Rock Solid Ranch out there, so the kids can see how an actual working farm is. Our youth board, junior officers, I just had a meeting with them last night. We have a really good group of kids. We haven't had youth officers since my kid was, I guess, about 15 or 16. And that's about 5 or 6 years ago. So I'm really stoked that we have youth officers now. They want to do more educational events. So if you are a kid, or if you have kids that might be interested in Dorpers, we're going to be doing more of this educational stuff. And this is a great place to get the kids out, to get them meeting people, meeting other kids. We're like a big family, the Dorper community, which is one of the things I think is great about us. We also have showmanship, which obviously showmanship in breeding Dorpers is a little different than regular showmanship, because we show them a little bit differently, but we have lots of those contests too. So we have a lot of different opportunities for our kids. In conclusion, I think I've said it. I think I just said it, actually. We are just, this breed is something that is near and dear to my heart. I just don't think you can go wrong with them. I think they offer so much. Go ahead and switch to the next slide, Katrina. I did kind of a whole thing. There we go. So these are just some pictures of some of the kids at the shows. I mean, we just have a great time. You could not ask for a better group of kids. If you have any questions, call me, email me. I am here to answer any question. I get calls and emails and texts all the time. I am more than happy to talk with you. I'll talk with you for 15 minutes. I'll talk with you for an hour. Anything you have regarding Dorpers and white Dorper sheep with the kids, or any questions. I mean, I've been raising them a long time. And I think outside of the junior aspect, you know, even the breeders, we all help each other. So if this is something you're interested in getting into, if your kid maybe was doing another project and wants to try something different, call me. Let me help you, or get with Katrina and she can put you in touch with me, or we can work together and help you out.
Sarah, we did have a question pop up in the chat box.
Yes.
And Melba wants to know, she has 2 questions now. So how many lambs do they typically have on average? I know you have some good ewes out there.
You know, it depends. There's a few things that affect that. What we do on our place, and what a lot of people do, is we flush our ewes before we breed them. So we gradually increase their plane of nutrition. So when that ram gets turned in, they're at peak nutrition, and it kind of puts their body into overdrive and makes them release more eggs. So a lot of times it increases your multiple births. Most of our ewes out here will twin. Now, we do have some older ewes, and the older the ewes get, they kind of get worn down a little bit, and you have more singles. Sometimes if it's a dry year, even if you flush them, you're going to get a lot of singles. And then you have some, like my old Bell Star ewe, that just has twins and triplets. If you look at her, she lambs all the time, and she's had, I think, 5 or 6 sets of triplets in her life. So it just depends. I would say mostly twins, if the nutrition is right, but the nutrition has to be right. If you're not feeding them right and making sure that you're flushing them, if you're just grazing them out on dirt, they're probably just going to have a single.
Belle has been a rock star for you and has done excellent for y'all. Melba's other question is about the guard dogs. So you have a picture of one of your livestock guardian dogs. Can you kind of talk about how important that is with your sheep?
Yes, that picture, that is one of our guard dogs when she was a puppy. That is one of the main issues you're going to have if you're raising sheep is predators. And in this general area, we have coyotes, we have bobcats, we have hawks, and we also unfortunately have stray dogs. And I'll be honest, the stray dogs are probably, depending on where you live, are probably the biggest problem, because they will chase a sheep till it keels over. So what we do is we run guard dogs with our sheep. That particular dog is an Anatolian Shepherd Great Pyrenees mix. That was when she was a puppy. She's 5 now, and she's a very, very good guard dog. We also run a full-blood Great Pyrenees. She's just about a year right now, I guess. In my opinion, they work better in teams. They can handle a predator load better. The number of dogs will depend on the number of sheep you have and what you're trying to combat. I try to make it, I hate to say easy on my dogs, but I really don't want to lose the dogs. I don't want to lose the sheep, and I don't want to set the dogs up for failure. So we pen our sheep in the barnyard every night. Every night, I bring them up into the barnyard with the dogs, and I shut the gate to our pasture. So they are not out in the pasture at night. They're out during the day, and the guard dogs are out there with them. And then at night, they come up to the barn, and that way they're not out in the open. So it kind of helps the dogs where they're not so stressed and having to run the pasture all night. There's 2 guard dogs out there, and there's about 20 ewes out there. Could one dog do it? Maybe. I feel better with a team at least. When I was running 50 ewes, I had 3 dogs and probably could have used a 4th. So it just depends. My opinion on these guard dogs is get them young, get them from someone reputable. Don't go and waste your money on an older dog that's been someone's pet. You know, I'm all for saving a life, and you know, and there's a lot of Pyrenees in rescue and Anatolians in rescue and stuff. My concern always is I've got a lot of money invested in my sheep out there, and my concern is what if something gets in there and the dog doesn't know how to protect them, or what if the dog does something to the sheep? Go with a pup or a younger dog and get it from someone reputable. I cannot stress that enough. I've made that mistake. I've gotten a dog that's not from someone reputable, and it gave me gray hair. Make sure they've been raised with the stock you're wanting them to protect. Don't get something that's been in the house. Get something that has been out in the barn. I'm so adamant about that. Don't make the same mistakes I did when I first got guard dogs. I lucked out on the first one, but the other ones I made a lot of mistakes on. Get them from someone reputable, and get them that have been raised with sheep, period.
Okay, that looks like that was all of our questions that we had. Sarah, some really great information that we all learned tonight, so I appreciate that you spending your evening with us. So again, this was recorded, and we will have it available fairly soon so that we can share it whenever we need to inform and educate more people on Dorpers and what great projects they are. So, anything else on your end?
Nope. I'd just like to say thanks everyone for joining in and listening to me ramble. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. But again, any questions, or you can go to the website. It's www.dorper.org, and all of the forms, the programs, everything I talked about is on that website. And then my contact information's right there on your screen, or it's on the website. And I'd be more than happy to talk with anybody that might be interested in getting into Dorpers, either as, a project for the kiddos or something. I mean, like I said, our kids are grown and gone. We still have sheep. We love them. So.
All right, well, we're gonna hang up and end the recording and we will go from there. So thank you all again.
Thank you.